All right, let's go one-on-one with the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff of California. Congressman, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. It's good to be with you.
So what happened with Steve Bannon today? He was invited to come and speak to the committee. He says yes, he comes, and then what happens?
Well, and then he refused to answer a broad range of questions concerning any meeting, conversation, or discussion that took place either during the transition or while he was with the White House, and a significant set of conversations that may have taken place even after he left the White House. So we served him with a subpoena during the hearing to convert it from a voluntary appearance to a mandatory one. His counsel then went back to the White House and came back to us with essentially the same gag rule from the White House, which is they've been instructed not to answer anything during those time periods. So we asked questions about the campaign, and then we laid a record by asking him all the questions that we had during transition and thereafter, if it's necessary to go to court to enforce this.
So it was from the White House. It wasn't Steve Bannon saying, no, I don't want to talk to you, because that would have been odd. He accepted the invitation. So something happened between the time he accepted the invitation and he came into your into the meeting today from the White House. What do you make of that?
Well, apparently Mr. Bannon was willing to testify before the committee. That was the representation of counsel, that he was not choosing to decline to answer these questions on his own accord, but rather because he was acting under the instructions of the White House. Counsel did make it clear that he had informed a lawyer for the majority. Now, that came as news to, I think, all of the rest of us in the room, but nonetheless, they insisted on following the advice of the White House and refused to answer this very broad set of questions. Now, I have to say, Chris, this was unprecedented in all the interviews that we have done. There have been times where we have taken strong issue with a witness refusing to answer a specific question. When the Attorney General was in the committee, I asked him whether he had ever been instructed to take any step that he believed might interfere or hinder the Russia investigation. He refused to answer that question. But here was an entire time period that was essentially made off limits by the White House.
And what is that time period again?
No questions essentially about anything that took place during the transition, no questions about anything that took place during the administration, and with respect to even after he left the White House, conversations that he'd had with the president when he's no longer an administration official. They also claimed that the White House could exercise some restriction on their freedom of speech. So,
and nobody else has done this before. You've never had the White House shut down any other interview?
No, nothing of this magnitude. There have been times where specific conversations between an administration official, a cabinet secretary, and the president, they declined to answer on the basis that maybe at some later point the White House would invoke executive privilege. Now, we don't recognize that. And we believe we should have insisted and should insist on answers to those questions, or insist that the White House invoke privilege. But that was as to a specific conversation with the president. This was as to any conversation with anyone in the White House or out of the White House, in the transition team or out of the transition team during those entire periods of time. We see nothing at all like that.
You don't have to evacuate or something right now, do you, Congressman? All right, good. That sound went away. Safety first, safety first. So this is a little bit of a bizarre development because you've had other interviews with individuals where this time period would have been considered sensitive by the White House for the same reasons, no?
Yes, that's certainly true. And we have other witnesses that are scheduled to come before our committee in which the White House may seek to a similar gag rule. If they do, obviously that's going to only escalate the problem.
So then what happens? If this becomes the new pattern, that as you get towards the inner circle of people around the president, the White House restricts their ability to answer, what happens next, and on what grounds? What are they exerting executive immunity on this, I guess?
Well, I think the next steps are, I assume that Mr. Bannon's counsel is going to go back to the White House and say, okay, this is not sustainable, what are we going to do? And the White House may seek to provide a narrower ban on what this witness can testify to. But if they don't invoke executive privilege, there's no basis for this witness or any other to say we're not going to answer on the basis of the fact that the White House doesn't want us to.
What can you do about it if that's the stalemate What can you do about it?
Well, we can go to court, as indeed the majority has shown a willingness to do when they wanted to get the bank records for Fusion GPS or they wanted to compel someone else's testimony. They have been willing to go to court, and that's what would be required here. We would have to go to court to enforce the subpoena. So that would be the next step, and it'll be necessary not only with this witness but others if the White House maintains this unprecedented and untenable position.
Well, it is an odd twist, that's for sure, especially when the main line out of the White House has been there's no collusion, there's nothing to see here. Now they're instructing Steve Bannon not to speak. Congressman Adam Schiff,